Genetically modified organisms are products of artificial manipulation and alteration of a species' genetic material in a laboratory using genetic engineering. Plant, animal, bacteria, and virus genes may be combined or may be crossbred to produce another kind of species that do not naturally occur in the environment. But it tends to have a problem the consumers in the market because of the fear of the possible waste caused by GMO. Advocates against biotechnology argue that the long-term effects of consumption of GM food is unknown and may increase allergenicity, toxicity, or nutritional value of food. There have also been claims and counterclaims of GMOs affecting non-target organisms, resulting in superweeds or resulting a breakdown of resistance to disease or having unknown effects on the food web itself, potentially harming the environment, affecting human and animal health and sustainability of agricultural systems. That is why the so-called biosafety was developed. But what is biosafety? Biosafety is defined as a discipline that addresses the safe handling and containment of infectious microorganisms and hazardous biological materials. This includes how to handle plants, animals, cell culture, bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, and public health crises such as COVID-19. The goal of biosafety is to reduce or eliminate exposure of lab personnel, the community, and the environment to potentially infectious or hazardous agents, and this is achieved via the principles of containment and risk assessment. There are initiatives for the protection of the general human population regarding the issues and concerns about GMOs. International organizations develop principles and treaties that somehow ensure biosafety on GMOs. So there are three biosafety on GMO, namely the Codex Alimentarius Commission, Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, and International Trade Agreement on Labeling of GM food and food products. I know you are all curious what these three are, so let's dig into them one by one. One of the biosafety on GMO is the so-called Codex Alimentarius or Codex. The term Codex Alimentarius is a Latin term that means food law or legal food code. It is a collection of standards, guidelines, and code of practice adopted by the Codex Alimentarius Commission. So the Codex is responsible for the development of standards, code of practices, guidelines, and recommendations on food safety. With the pressing issues and concern on GMOs in 2003, Codex has developed principles for the human health risk analysis of genetically modified food products. The principles include pre-market assessments of GM food products and its evaluation of direct and indirect effects. Generally, it means that this specific biosafety is a collection of internationally adopted food standards that constitute a global reference point for national food legislators and control agencies. The Codex has a great impact on the approach to food quality management throughout the world. But what are the food standard and objectives under this particular biosafety? Food under Codex: any substance, whether processed, partly processed, or raw, which is intended for human consumption and includes drinks, chewing gum, and any substance which has been used in the manufacture, preparation, or treatment of food but does not include cosmetics, tobacco, or substance used solely as drugs. So anything as long as it was consumed and for human consumption. Next, Codex Standards: food requirements intended to provide consumers with a sound food product free from adulteration, correctly labeled and presented. So the name, scope, description, essential consumption and quality factors of food additives, contaminants, hygiene, weights and measures, labeling and methods of analysis and sampling. As you can see, all the necessary details of the product was sufficiently and completely labeled. It must be visible on the container of the product before distributed in the market. Now let's proceed to the Codex Objectives. So the Codex Objectives is to protect the health of consumers, to ensure fair practices in the food trade, and to coordinate all work regarding food standards. So due to labeling, the consumers will know what are the ingredients used of the product and to avoid allergen as well. Wherein due to this kind of biosafety, we can select and easily identify the quality of food. GMOs could cause risk to biodiversity and human health. In response to concerns about the potential risk of GMOs, the government adopted an international agreement known as the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. Cartagena Protocol is an international environmental treaty that regulates the transboundary movements of living modified organisms. The Cartagena Protocol requires exporters to seek consent from the importers before its first shipment. The objectives of the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety is to protect biodiversity by ensuring that GMOs are handled, transported, and used in safe manner, and also to establish rules and procedures to regulate the movements of GMOs from one country to another and to facilitate informed decision making. Last is the International Trade Agreement on Labeling of GM Food and Food Products. The agreement requires exporters of GM food and food products to label their products and give rights to importing parties to reject or accept the GM products. The premise of this policy is that consumers have the right to know and the freedom to choose GM and non-GM products. All the GMO product must be correctly labeled by format, but labeling varies in different countries and areas. And that was the 3 biosafety on GMO, or a genetically modified organism. The World Health Organization claims that all GM products that are available in the international market have passed safety assessment by national authorities. The safety assessments basically look at the environment and health risk factors, and food safety usually follows the Codex Food Code. It's very obvious that biosafety is important, as it ensures that all of us or whoever else involved are properly handling infectious organisms and hazardous biological materials. Now let's proceed to our next topic, which is the GMOs in Philippine context. Genetically modified organisms products were introduced to Philippine agriculture by Filipino researchers as a way to combat nutrient deficiency and malnutrition. According to the World Food Program, about 1 out of 9 people in the world do not have enough food to live a healthy life. This amounts to 795 million people in the world who are hungry, most of whom come from developing countries where 12.9% of the total populations lack food to eat. In the case of the Philippines, this is an even bigger problem. The Philippines has the highest poverty incidence among its association of Southeast Asian nation peers, with a national poverty of 25.8%. According to the World Bank data, the Philippines has a lot of work to do to alleviate poverty and address issues of public health such as VAT. This is where GMOs such as BT corn, BT talong, and golden rice enters as a solution to relieve and eventually end the battle against VAT and hunger. Moreover, it also aims to give the farmers a chance to provide food while farming sustainably and efficiently without the threat of having shortage or attack of insects that kill their crops, GMO experts and advocates say. Introduction of GMOs in our country created issues and controversies similar to other countries with GMOs. Genetically modified organisms in the Philippines have been controversial, with a number of people around the world saying they have negative impacts on the environment, can cause genetic pollution, and are not good for human consumption. However, the Philippines was the first in Asia to approve commercial cultivation of a GM crop for animal feed and food in 2002 when it allowed GM corn planting. It has also allowed GM crop imports for more than a decade. Around 70% of its corn output is GM. The Philippines has also ratified the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, which requires the regulation of GMOs before they are subject to transboundary movements. And the science-based regulation permitted the Philippines to be the first Asia to have a GM crop commercial. Golden rice was the first GMO in the Philippines. It was developed by the Department of Agriculture Philippine Rice Research Institute in partnership with the International Rice Research Institute to contain additional levels of beta-carotene, which the body converts into vitamin A. Golden rice is a variety of rice produced through genetic engineering to biosynthesize beta-carotene, a precursor of vitamin A in the edible parts of the rice. It is intended to produce a fortified food to be grown and consumed in areas with a shortage of dietary vitamin A. For those millions of people affected by vitamin A deficiency, 1 cup of golden rice a day could provide half the amount needed for a healthy diet. Next, what are the impact of GMO in the Philippines? Productivity growth of the country's corn industry was estimated to be 11.45% higher due to GM corn adoption. GMO's critics argue that the technology poses risk to public health, while advocates say such fears have not been scientifically proven and that high-yielding, genetically altered crops would help ensure food security as the world's population grows. The use of GMOs is indisputable. This is because the genetic modifications in these crops were made to answer existing problems in the various industries. Unsurprisingly, this translates to agricultural innovations as well. And GMOs impact the Philippines economically, like more gains and rice enrichment. GMOs in the Philippines still have a long way to go, whether it be in terms of research, policy, or usage. With the ever-growing innovations and discoveries in science, the current roster of GMO crops can further improve. Time and application will tell us more about genetically modified organisms in the future. That concludes my report. By the way, I am Novme Pakultad, your reporter. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.